Good morning, all. So I have completed the historical rating guide for Parallax football. If people want to create any team that they have data for, that would be college, high school, or pro football in history, you can use this guide to rate teams for Parallax football. It's completely free. It's in my Google Drive, Parallax football add-ons. For those who are interested in Parallax football or Parallax football original, there is a ratings guide. This uses, the game itself uses a kind of a standardization for football simulation. Therefore, the ratings guides use historical rating statistical rating paradigms to rate all teams. Therefore, every team is relative. So you could create your favorite 1973 Vikings team and play them against the 2024 Kansas City Chiefs. It will be what it is, right? This rates all 9 variables for the teams in Parallax football. It's pretty simple. I think the data that I use to rate the teams are available in just about any statistical magazine. So if you have an old magazine, this data should be available. If you have an old Neff, Cohen, and Korch Pro Football Reference book, almost any NFL book, etc., even arena football or Canadian ball, if you have access to this data, most of this data is available somewhere in history. Even high school teams or college teams, you should have some of this data available if they kept statistics. They may not give you the raw score. You might have to do the math if they don't. For instance, high school teams might just keep passes completed, yardage, right? So you'll have to do the math to get yards per pass attempt, right? They may not put yards per pass attempt. So let's take a look at it. Again, it's completely free. This is for those who want to rate historical teams. Talk a little bit about it here. So the game has 9 variables: passing ability for teams, rushing ability, receiving, run stuff on defense, linebacking on defense, coverage on defense, and then there is punting, place kicking, and return man. And so all of this can be done with historical grades. Just to let people know, A is an outstanding performance, B is above league average, C is league average, D would be below league average, and F would be a poor performance. So even if you didn't want to try to use statistics, you could use subjectivity to say, looking at ratings. For instance, you could do it based on where they finished in league rankings. So for instance, let's say you wanted to rate passing, you could just sort all the NFL teams of a particular year by passing yards, for instance, or by quarterback rating or completion percentage, whatever you think. I would use completion percentage because that's what the game uses. And divide that by 5, and you would have your categories of A through F. That would be a way to rate seasons and make everybody relative to that season. But this assumes relativity throughout history. So anyway, this just gives you an idea of what the grades mean in the game. So passing, it's based on the team's offensive pass completion percentage. So very simple. You could use quarterbacks for individuals. So if again, the game uses totals. But if you wanted to devise, if you want to rate individual offensive players, you can, but then make sure when you call plays in Parallax football that you use a player decide or die that dictates who's getting the carry or who's the target on a reception or who's the starting quarterback. But Parallax football assumes that the team's ability to pass, complete passes, to run for yardage, and to catch for yardage. Okay, but let's just say, for instance, it's the 1956. I can't remember what Johnny Unitas did in 56, but let's say it's 1956. Johnny Unitas, he probably falls in here for pass, or again, I say the Colts, not Johnny Unitas, but the Colts. They probably fall in here between 44 and 51. They would be a D passing team. So passing D, right? Rushing, let's say as a team they ran for, this is team totals, they ran for 4 yards a carry. They'd be a C rushing team. Receiving, again, let's say they completed, let's say they had a pass completion per attempt of 7.3, they would be a B, which means they don't complete high percentage, but they complete longer passes. And you're going to find older NFL seasons are going to be low in completions, higher in yards per pass attempt, generally. Not all the time, right? If you want to rate individual receivers, so you can target them as opposed to just using a raw score, then you want to take the receivers' yards per completion and divide it by 2 for their yards per pass. So let's say I have Jerry Rice, who caught average 14 yards per catch. I would divide that by 2. It would be 7. Jerry Rice would be a C, right? So again, we're talking about keeping it within the averages of Parallax football. Okay, so you might say, well, Jerry Rice would suck. Well, it's not his ability to catch the ball. It's his ability. It's his yards per catch we're looking for there, right? Okay, so anyway, pretty simple. You could rate individual backs based on their average or teams based on their average. Again, if you're going to rate individuals, make sure when you play the game, you've determined who's carrying the ball on every snap to keep it fair. You can see I also added simple adjustments for college and high school shifts for both pass completions, for run average, and for receiving average, or for yards per attempt average. So there is a way to adjust for college, high school, and Canadian rushing. Defense, same thing, right? We're going to use a defense's yards per rush against for the season. So let's say it's the Steel Curtain of 74. Let's say they're 3.4. They would be an A rush defense, right? Let's say their linebackers allowed only, 48% completions against, not linebackers, team pass completions. But again, this is going to be reflected as linebacking, although you're using the team. You're not looking at linebackers, you're looking at the whole team. They'd be a B. So like this Steel Curtain might be an A against the run, B against the pass. And coverage, let's say they gave up 4.6, they would be an A in coverage. So the Steel Curtain, again, I'm guessing, but let's say the Steel Curtain's an A, B, A, right? Okay, and again, we do not shift defense for any level of play. So high school, college, Canadian, we never shift defense. We only shift for offense. So defense is standardized for all football levels. So don't worry about shifting for defense on those. Okay. Punting is very simple. Use the gross average for your punter or for the team's punting. So I would suggest if you're making teams, just use the team's overalls for all this. But if you want, for instance, to have punters plural, then you could have a punt. Some teams did have 2 punters, in a season, and one guy might have punted well while the guy was out injured or something, and the other guy punts a little better. You could put both punters on your team, but this should be team gross stuff. And this is gross averages, so you're going to see this is going to be it's going to seem a little low. That's because the return man grade reflects against this. So this might seem low, especially for modern punters. But remember, it has to be matched against return man. Okay, so place kicking, this percentage includes PAT percentage. So this will be normally higher for every place kicker in history because most place kickers have a higher PAT percentage, but you're going to add them both up. So let's say it's Gary Anderson. I don't know what year. Let's just say Gary Anderson. Let's say he had a season where he made 75% of all of his field goals, but he made 100% of his. We divide that by 2, 87.5%. Gary Anderson would be a B place kicker. So you're going to add his place kicking, field goal attempts, and his PAT percentage. So you add the percentages together. So 75% and 100% is 175 divided by 2, 87.5% kicker. And he would be a B. This would account for his ability to kick both PATs. Again, would Gary Anderson underperform in PATs? No, he'll be 100%. What this is going to do is make every place kicker a little better, probably, in their grade because you're going to add their PAT percentage, which means there's going to be less teams missing PATs, hopefully, which is fine, right? We're not going to worry about that. But this does count. You want to have both percentages tallied and divided by 2 for your place kickers. Again, this would be team place kicking, but you could do individual place kickers, right? Most teams have one, but in history, there have been teams that have had 3 or 4. I would use their team grade, so you have a wider average. If not, you got to pick a guy who's either going to be way off on his PATs or he's going to be way off on his. So you want to use the team. Return min is very simple. We're going to add kick return average and punt return average together, divide by 2, and we're going to get a raw number. So again, I would use team punt return average and kick return average for teams punt and kicks, but you could use a player. If you use a player, again, you're probably going to get higher numbers because most people, but you could rate multiple kick returners / punt returners. But for a team, I would add them up, divide it by 2, and you're going to get an average. If they're up to 12, they're an F. If they're 16 or higher, they're an A. And I give an example of the 2006 Chicago Bears. Their punt return as a team was 12.1. Their kick return as a team was 23.3. That's 35.4 divided by 2 is 17.7. We round down on this. The Bears would be an A return team with an asterisk because they had a touchdown. So you would award them an asterisk. And you could have a F team with an asterisk. Now, the rule book, when you create teams, you can't. Only A teams can return punts and kicks. But in history, you're going to find a lot of teams are going to be average, but they're going to have a chance to return for a touchdown because they did. So you would award an asterisk next to that, reminding you that punts and kicks can be returned for touchdowns. So you should be able to, if you have this data available, or you at least have raw data, you can do the math on. So if you have the raw data on field goals and PAT attempts and made, you can do the raw percentages. However, most publishers publish lots of data. You should have it right at your fingertips. So, for instance, if you want to rate, passing percentages, very simple. Every stat database in history usually gives you a team's pass completions, right? Rushing, I guarantee, does. The one stat that's been kept in history has been rushing yardage, rushing yardage, and yards per attempt. So you should have that easily available. And then yards per pass attempt can be tricky because you have to divide yards. So let's say Mahomes throws for 4,500 yards divided by 600 pass attempts. He averaged 7.5 per attempt. Mahomes would be a B, right? So that's pretty simple. And you're going to use this, by the way, say Mahomes, that would be passing yards per pass attempt, not yards per completion, right? And again, this is why if you're going to do individual receivers, you got to divide it by 2. That's going to give you yards per. Or if you know the target, for instance, you could use targeting. So if you know a receiver was targeted percentage of time, you can divide their yards per pass, yards per completion by target percentage, right? So let's say Jerry Rice averaged 13 yards per completion. Well, Jerry Rice is a bad example. They didn't keep targeting numbers back then. But let's say modern receiver averaged 11. Let's say it's Kelsey averaged 11 yards per attempt. And let's say he was targeted. His targeted completion percentage, targeted versus catches, let's say is pretty high. Divided by, let's say it's 86%, he would be at 12.7, right? Actually, no, that would be wrong. It would be divided by, you'd still divide it by 2 because you need to know per attempt, not per catch. So he would be a 6 point something, which would make him a D or C, right? So anyway, what you're going to find, remember, where the, this is going to seem, again, probably low when it comes to rating receivers. But that's because guys like Kelsey may have only averaged 10 yards per catch or 9 yards per catch, or whatever. A lot of guys catch a lot of passes and they don't have really high numbers anymore. Back in the day, the Raiders' top receiver might catch 44 balls with a 20-yard average. He would be an A. He would use the 8 yards for completion yardage, right? Anyway, again, and you shift for college and high school. You'll shift for college, high school, and Canadian ball and rushing offense, and you'll shift for high school and college for passing percentages. In defense, you never shift. So anyway, it's really simple. I'm spending more time on this than need to be. But this now would allow you to rate historical teams for Parallax football. All right. Everybody out there, have a wonderful weekend. Good day.